Welcome to Week 14 of the NFL season. The Jets are in Miami, in really South Florida. It is not Miami. It is Miami Gardens, as the green and white are set to take on the Miami Dolphins for the first of two meetings in the final 5 weeks. There's Jets All-Pro defensive tackle Quinnen Williams, tasked with going up against a fellow Crimson Tide, trying to sack a fellow Crimson Tide player. And Tua Tagovailoa, Jamie and Sherwood entering Hard Rock Stadium. Welcome to Pregame Central, presented by USVI. Ethan Greenberg, Eric Allen, Quincy Enunwa. Week 14. I'm a little jealous of the weather.
I certainly am as well. I like it warm, but it's warm in the studio.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, it's getting warmer out here. It was like 30 degrees. It's about 50 today. I can live with that.
Yeah, it's going to be in the 40s today. And Jeff Albrecht said, hey, listen, players had to hydrate during the week to get ready for this ball game because Miami, South Florida, there in December, that definitely is an advantage for the home team.
You know, if there's anyone that doesn't like the heat, I'm going to say it's that guy right over there, Quincy. He's probably thankful that we're in a controlled climate here at One Jets Drive. Quincy, for the Jets today, where do you stand on how to keep spirits up? There's 5 games left. The Jets, the last 2 games, Indianapolis and then Seattle, they could have won either, and then down the stretch kind of fizzled in both.
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately you got to know that you're a good team. I think you just have not been playing well. And I like what Coach Ulbrich said is that, I can't keep saying that we're a good team until we prove that we're a good team. But internally, right, you have to believe that because every game, there's only been about 2 games that you really were outplayed. And I think that would be Pittsburgh and the Cardinals, right? Every other game, you've been pretty much in the game. You just have to figure out, what am I doing? When adversity strikes, how can I maintain my spirits? How can I maintain the good play that we've had? And that's something they have to figure out for these next 4 or 5 games. What can they do to finish the season strong? Because you want to go into next season with some better mentality.
Yeah, there's Jets rookie running back Braylon Allen. It's going to be a big day for him there against the Dolphins. Breece Hall downgraded to out on Saturday, so Hall will miss his first game in 2024. That means Allen is the likely starter in that offensive backfield. That's also going to include Isaiah Davis. Davis gets on the board last week with a touchdown reception against the Seahawks.
Yeah, Jeff Ulbrich really was complimentary of Isaiah Davis, who, throughout training camp, we saw he was one of the guys that flashed throughout training camp. Obviously, his reps limited so far through the season because the Jets really like what they have in Braylon Allen ahead of him. And, of course, Breece Hall's been the workhorse for the Jets. But those two guys, they were drafted, obviously, for a reason, but you forget on how much they flash. That's Isaiah Davis right there on your screen. Really, throughout training camp, I'm excited to see what Isaiah Davis can do. But, someone that's probably a little upset at the fact that Isaiah Davis has a bigger role on offense is Brant Boyer, because he also said Isaiah Davis has been one of the saviors for that special teams unit that performed so well last week.
Yeah, but Boyer's got Kene Wangu, okay, and he could get some snaps out of the backfield as well. So, special teams player of the week. Davis so far this season, as we look at the rookie, 4 catches. And again, we'll have to see how those reps are distributed today. But Braylon Allen so far this season, 67 carries. He's averaging 3.6 yards a pop, and he's got the 2 touchdowns. Unfortunately, I really wanted to see Breece Hall here, but over these final 5 games for the Jets, you want to take a long look at some of the guys that you have in-house, right. The rookies. Olu Fashanu is going to be starting at left tackle for a 3rd consecutive game. You got Braylon Allen out of the backfield. You got Isaiah Davis. You got Wangu, who was tremendous last week against the Seahawks. Conversely, you got the starting veteran quarterback in Aaron Rodgers, who celebrated his 41st birthday this week, began with Jeff Albrecht saying, we're sticking with Rodgers.
Right, and you mentioned Olu Fashanu. For more on him, let's go to Miami to check in with Caroline Hendershot.
Last week, rookie Olu Fashanu made his 2nd career start at left tackle and didn't allow any pressures on 42 pass block snaps. I spoke to him this week about what made him so successful, and he said it was a bunch of factors. Going against Tack McKinley all week in practice, asking Morgan Moses more questions, and having a really good grasp on his assignments and his matchups heading into the game. For today's matchup, Olu is going to be seeing one of his old collegiate teammates, defensive end Chop Robinson. Now, he told me Chop is very twitchy. He's super fast, and he is an elite get-off, which makes him so disruptive. However, the Dolphins are 0-6 in games where they have fewer than 2 sacks. So that is going to be a huge point of emphasis for this O-line group today.
vote for longtime Jets fan Joe Abramsky, a retired FDNY 9/11 responder, to be crowned the 2024 NFL Fan of the Year, presented by Captain Morgan at the Super Bowl in New Orleans. Scan the QR code to learn more about Joe and cast your vote. All right, you're watching Pregame Central, presented by USVI. We're taking a look at the Jets warm-up. Of course, that is the mullet, the Wisconsin waterfall. That is Joe Tippmann warming up in Miami Gardens as the Jets prepare to take on the Dolphins.
The Wisconsin waterfall?
Yeah, that's what they called him when they drafted him. That's what they called the mullet. So when Caroline was talking about Olu Fashanu, we were talking about the rookies, what you want to see down the stretch. Olu, by all accounts and purposes, seemed like he really took a jump from his first start at left tackle to his second start. The analytics websites that Caroline mentioned, like Pro Football Focus, has 0 pressures on 42 pass blocking snaps. But Quincy, when you see Olu's jump on tape, like, what stands out to you about the player that the Jets drafted, number 11 overall?
I mean, ultimately, you're seeing that he's getting comfortable. Like, that first game was rough for him. I'm going to be honest, right? He was slipping all over the place, letting guys past him. But as he's gotten more comfortable, he's gotten more reps, you've seen him kind of settle it into his role, and he really understands how to play football in the NFL. He understands that he was drafted for a reason, and he has the skills needed to play at this level. I think he has the confidence of Aaron Rodgers, who's multiple times said how good he is. So it's great that he has him, and he's learning from guys like Tyron Smith and Morgan Moses. So, I'm glad that they have this guy, and they've got a really good young nucleus. When we were talking about the backs, right, I think I'm going to be looking forward to Allen and Davis out there at the same time. Both those guys have scored touchdowns when they've had 2 backs out there. So it'll be great for them to kind of have that to kind of bounce off of and make some good plays.
Fashanu's getting more experience. You got John Simpson, who's had a great year. You got Tippmann at the pivot. And then over at right guard, Elijah Vera-Tucker. Of course, we're going to have to see what happens in the offseason with those veteran tackles and Tyron Smith, who's on IR, and, of course, Morgan Moses, who also had a 1-year deal.
The Jets, the last time they were on the road, they struggled. They lost the Cardinals 31-6. After 2 games, was it in the month of November, right? That's it. It's kind of crazy to think about. EA, how did the Jets start fast on the road? Because this is a team in the Miami Dolphins that they have a track team out there, and they can put up points in a hurry.
Well, here's a key point for me is the Jets got to flip the script like they did against the Patriots last year. I think heading to New England, heading to Gillette Stadium in that final game, the Jets had actually lost 15 consecutive games to the Patriots. Now you're taking on a Dolphins team. Gentlemen, do you know the last time the Jets won at Miami? At Miami.
All I know, wait, I think I do know.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I've been with the team since 2016. Yep. It's before that. Yeah. Was it Geno's the last game of the year with Geno as quarterback?
That's right. Yeah. 2014, Geno threw for more than 300 yards. Eric Decker, 10 catches for 221 yards. Yes, the Jets won as a visitor in 2015, but that game was played at Wembley Stadium in London. So, listen, you have to flip the script against a division rival here because the Jets have not won in Miami since 2014. And what better way to flip everything, what's going on here? We talk about the finishes, the 1-score losses, the close defeats. Go down to Miami and take care of business.
Yeah, well, let me ask you this, Quincy. Is there anything that maybe, I don't want to say that you're looking forward to, but Alan Lazard is one of the players that was activated off of injured reserve. Yeah. We have not seen Alan Lazard, Devontae Adams, and Garrett Wilson on the field at the same time since Week 7 against the Pittsburgh Steelers. With Lazard now back in the lineup, how does that change, if anything, things for Aaron Rodgers and the Jets?
Yeah, well, first off, you guys, we talked about age before the show, and you guys are making me feel old, right? The last game was in 2014. That was my first game I ever played, so it's cool to kind of look back at that. 2015 was a great game. B. Marsh had a crazy game that game. But, as far as those guys go, I think they've been playing out of position, right? I would say Devontae Adams hasn't been playing in the position that he's most comfortable at. They put Garrett Wilson there, but now you can move Devontae Adams out. You can put Alan Lazard in, and that's going to be a completely different trio. I think it'll help Aaron Rodgers because you can tell he kind of goes to the guys he's comfortable with. He wants to get it to those guys. He knows where they're going to be at. There's a great synergy between them, so it's going to be great for him to have those guys out there. We might be able to see a 300-yard game now. This is a good Miami Dolphins defense, so I'm just kind of hoping for that. But, let's see what happens.
Both these quarterbacks, impressive statistics. If you look over the last 5 games, there's Aaron Rodgers. He's had 9 touchdown passes and 1 interception. Tua, nine touchdowns, 0 interceptions the past 3 games.
Yeah, he has a 13-1, I think, over his past 5. And look, Tua, it's interesting when you take a look at, or you think about this Dolphins team, because when we saw Aaron Rodgers' stats next to Tua's, the thing that stands out on both of the lines there is that Tua's completion percentage is 74%. Yeah. If the season ended tomorrow, that would be an NFL record. Yeah. So he completes the ball at a high level.
Can we say something here about Rodgers? Wilson and Adams last week, Garrett Wilson, Davante Adams, 22 of the 39 targets last week, and Wilson had 41 yards on 10 targets from Aaron Rodgers. Now you're entering Lazard into the equation.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how it goes because Lazard also was the go-to guy before Davante or came to the Jets and before Aaron Rodgers and Garrett Wilson really got on the same page. So, we'll see how it plays out today against the Dolphins defense that, to your point, Quincy, is, I think, an overlooked aspect. It's easy to think about Tua, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Devon Achane. But this Dolphins defense is extremely talented, and it's a top 10 unit over the entire season. Over the past 7 weeks since the bye week, it's 15th in the NFL, but again, doesn't have a great pass rush. But they have some great players like Jalen Ramsey.
Yeah, Jalen Ramsey, Calais Campbell, right? They've got some good pieces there. Now, I want to kind of switch back over to the offense. I really like this offense. I've kind of talked about it ever since Mike McDonald got there. They do a good job of staying within rhythm, right? Tua knows where his guys are. He knows that they're going to be where he wants them to be. It's kind of similar to the way that Aaron Rodgers wants to run his offense, where when I turn around, I want you to be right where I need you to be at. And they do a good job of scheming guys up with motions, with stacks, with all different type of things that makes it hard for the DBs to cover them. And if we are not going to see Sauce today, the DBs got to make sure they stay in close to these guys because the minute that they even create a little bit of separation, Tua is putting that ball there.
So we're looking at Garrett Wilson right now. I'm just wondering if Jalen Ramsey's going to be more on the side of Davante Adams. Mm-hmm. And then who's going to be with Garrett today?
Right.
Yeah, so I would think that Davante Adams would see more of Jalen Ramsey. I mean, they've seen each other more often. Yeah, when the Jets played the Dolphins last year in Miami, it was Jalen who matched up against Garrett, of course. But I think that, that's going to be one of the things to take a note of because as you take a look at throughout their both very decorated careers, Davante Adams has been targeted 14 times against Ramsey. He's caught 9 of those balls for 117 yards, and obviously the chemistry between him and Aaron Rodgers is unparalleled, even though, to Quincy's point, he's playing a new position. And I know Bart Scott had mentioned that when when Davante first got traded, he was thinking about the X's and O's in terms of Davante was learning a new position. Yep. And, it's interesting, though, because we talked about Jalen Ramsey. Javon Holland is a very talented safety. Yep. But the Dolphins' rushing defense, EA, is one of the best in the NFL, and the Jets obviously without their star running back in Breece Hall.
Yeah, it's been really solid this year. If you look at Miami overall, it's a 5-17. But if Tua had been playing all these games, I think they might be in a playoff position right now because defensively, even after all these significant changes on that side of the ball, Anthony Weaver has done a good job with that unit, and they played, by and large, good football. Now Tua's back in the mix, and Miami has been very good offensively. Yes, the Dolphins were cold in Green Bay last week, but they've won 3 of the past 4 games, and they've been explosive again offensively.
And since the bye, so week 7 to 13 for the Miami Dolphins, they have the 8th best passing offense in the league. Obviously, the return of Tua Tagovailoa in the lineup is a huge, huge part of that. Tyreek Hill, the ultimate weapon in the NFL, hasn't had 100 yards receiving since week 1, and that's including multiple games back with Tagovailoa into the lineup. But, Quincy, when you take a look at Tua, Jeff Ulbrich said this is what we expect from him now, where you have elite ball placement.
Yeah.
How do you disrupt him?
You got to get him out of his rhythm, right? You got to bring some pressure. The Jets have done a good job of blitzing, but they haven't always gotten home. Now, Will McDonald does a good job whether you blitz or not. He's got 10 sacks this year. That's the guy that's really coming on and really showing that he belongs in the league. He's got to really make an impact. And then also, Quentin Williams has to show up today as well. You got to bring that pressure up the middle, get in his face, right? Because, like I said earlier, Tua likes to throw within rhythm. He might do a play-action sweep, turn around, and he throws it right there. If it's a slant, if it's an out route, those guys are in those positions. So you got to kind of disrupt those lanes. You got to make it tough on them.
Tyreek Hill scored a touchdown in 3 of the past 4 games, and last week he got into the end zone. I know that was a crazy kind of reception there, but he had 83 yards against the Packers. That was his most since week 1. You mentioned the 100-yard mark that he hit there in week 1. It seems like forever now.
Yes, it does, and he's also dealing with a wrist injury that's probably been hindering him over the last X amount of weeks. For more on the matchup between the Jets defense and the Dolphins offense, let's go back to Miami with Caroline Hendershot. All right, the Jets are in Miami today, but Jets fans, you got to lock in your tickets now to see the green and white in action when they host the LA Rams at MetLife Stadium December 22nd at 1 p.m., presented by the New Jersey Lottery. Secure your seats now at nyjets.com/tickets and get ready to bring the energy. You're watching Pregame Central presented by USVI. Ethan Greenberg, Eric Allen, and Quincy Enunwa. That was Caroline Hendershot down in Miami Gardens. And when we're talking about this Dolphins offense, or because Quincy Williams was talking about it, he's talking about the pressure burst pipes, and EA, the Jets really have to get after Tua to knock him off of his rhythm, because Jeff Ulbrich said it, he's very much a rhythm timing quarterback. That's the way Mike McDaniel schemed it down there.
Yeah, schematically they do a lot of very clever things, and it typically starts with the run game, and we're watching Olu here. He's about to make his third consecutive start at left tackle for the Jets, of course. But they have not run it really well this year. If you look at their numbers, Achane, he's been very productive, but more as a receiver. He's got 6 receiving touchdowns so far this season.
Yeah, he has 9 total touchdowns on the year. But Quincy, when you have a guy like that, like Achane, who's another guy, if he gets the ball in his hands, he can take it the distance.
Yeah.
What's the best way to defend someone like that? Because he's a mismatch nightmare.
Yeah, I mean, you got to be physical with them, right? Like they have, like I said, it's a track meet, right? But track runners are not guys that are real football players, right? They're not always used to being physical. So you got to slow them down. You got to hit them a few times. Let them know that you might be able to run, but I'm going to really smack you. Like football is a physical game, right? And I think in this game, you got to be physical. Who's going to be the more physical team? You got to go out there and play smash mouth football. So that's really the biggest thing. They got smaller guys that can move well. If you can get your hands on them and slow them down, you can kind of create more of a consternation. I had a coach that used to love to say that. A little bit more consternation in there.
How different is Tyreek Hill to that point, Quincy? Yeah. Like, as someone who played the position, even taking a look at guys who are fast in the league, even like his teammate, Jalen Waddle. Like you mentioned, track guys. Xavier Worthy for the Chiefs is another good example.
Yeah.
Why is Tyreek so different?
I mean, he's kind of like a bowling ball, right? He's stocky, but he's also really fast. And one thing that he's done a really good job of is not tipping off his route. So he runs straight, and he won't tell you whether he's going left or right. And with this offense, he does a lot of motioning, right? So he might motion into a position that puts him behind a receiver, and now he's hidden. Then once he finally uncovers, he can go left or right. So you got to play your technique. You have to play sound, because once he makes that stick, he's gone. And if you're not in the right position, you're not going to be able to keep up with him.
Hill, Waddle, Achane, Jonnu Smith is having a great year. You do have to stop the run, because if they get the run game going early, you don't have a chance against these guys.
Well, and also the Jets are likely to be without Sauce Gardner. And he was dealing with a hamstring injury all week, listed as doubtful, which, I don't really think that players come back from doubtful designations very often. Yeah. And this is another guy, Quinnen Williams, who if you're going to need a big game from him, because if you get pressure, especially up the middle, make Tua get out of the pocket, especially to his non-dominant side, like that's going to be a key for the Jets. But
he reads it very well, Tua. He'll go through those progressions pretty quick.
Yeah, definitely. 1, 2, 3, really quick. If he doesn't see it, he goes to the next guy. But with Quinnen, though, I think the biggest thing for him is, like, I think when you look at the difference between last year and this year, they really had a lot of talent in the middle, and that's what kind of created that dual threat of their defense, right? Where the DBs could really sit on things because they knew that the inside interior pressure was going to get home. This year they haven't had that talent, so they have to figure out a way to kind of create that. Quinnen has to, I don't want to say wake up, but he has to kind of, come to work today and show up, show up more than he ever has.
And I know we got a lot to get to, but I will say this. It kind of gets lost in the mix of everything that's happening here with the Jets so far this season and of late. But C.J. Mosley was placed on injured reserve this week, and you're not going to see him the rest of the season. And I think the Jets really missed him this year. Yeah. That's not to say that Jamie Sherwood didn't take steps. He certainly did. But this guy was the heartbeat of your defense. And he ended up playing, I think, 4 games this year.
Yeah, and, it's unfortunate because he was supposed to play against the New England Patriots, and then it seemed like he was not on the inactives list, let's put it that way. And then something happened pregame, neck stiffened up. And then he tried to come back, and, they just couldn't make his way back to the lineup. So to your point, there are 5 games left, but I don't think anyone's thinking C.J. Mosley is going to be activated for the final game.
You would doubt it.
Yeah. Right. So for all intents and purposes, his season is done. But before we get to our X factors here, the guy that would take over in that spot at cornerback for Sauce Gardner is Brandon Echols. And obviously everyone's going to say this. Well, Brandon Echols has 2 picks this year. The Jets have 2 picks this year. Brandon Echols has 2 pick sixes against Tua Tagovailoa in his career. One of them came against the Miami Dolphins his rookie season. But this is still a very challenging task. And not to mention, Brandon Echols is your starting gunner on special teams. Right. The backup has been Quantez Stiggers. He's out too.
Yeah. But great opportunity for Brandon Echols. And you look at the roster, DJ Reed, we'll see what happens with him in the offseason, of course. He has an expiring contract. The Jets have a lot of decisions to make. So if you're Brandon Echols, this is a great opportunity. And he also is a guy who's walking into the stadium today with that suitcase. And what's in that suitcase? Tua's kryptonite. 2 pick sixes against Tua.
Yeah. All right. Well, with that, it's time to get to our X Factors here on Pregame Central, presented by USVI. Let's actually start in Miami with Caroline.
All right, my X factor for today is going to be the Dolphins D-line. I know I spoke about this earlier when I talked about Olu, but I really do think it's going to be the biggest factor in today's game. The Dolphins have 21 sacks this year, which is tied for the second fewest in the NFL, and they haven't won a game when they have fewer than 2 sacks. So I think containing Calais Campbell and Zach Sealer, who both are leaders of this team with 4 sacks each, is going to be huge for the Jets O-line today.
See?
Yeah, so I'm going to go with the Jets rookie running backs. I think that when you think about Breece Hall being out, you need somebody else to step up. These two guys have been waiting for their moment. It's going to be an exciting day for them. Isaiah Davis scored a touchdown last week, and guess who else was out there with them? Braylon Allen. I spoke about it earlier when those 2 backs are in. When the Jets do 2 backs, a lot of exciting things happen. Braylon Allen's first touchdown was a 2-back set. So let's see if the Jets go out there a little bit more. I like the creativity they've been adding the last couple of weeks.
Dolphins tight end Jonnu Smith, who is the Dolphins' leading receiver. It isn't Tyreek Hill. It isn't Jalen Waddle. Yes, it's Jonnu Smith, and he got off last week against the Green Bay Packers, and he's just 6 yards behind Hill for the team receiving yardage lead. And when they look in his direction, good things happen. He's got 58 receptions this year on 74 targets.
Yeah, I think Jonnu Smith is very underrated on this Dolphins team. He's like second in the NFL among tight ends in receiving yards since week 7. And for me, I'm going with the Jets defensive line, really their pass rush overall, whether that's blitzing, whether that's just using the guys up front. Obviously, we talked about Quinnen Williams being a big part of that. But if you want to knock Tua Tagovailoa out of his rhythm, which is really what that offense is schemed up to be, you're going to have to get a good pass rush, and perhaps the Jets will utilize the blitz a little more. Remember what they did when Tua Tagovailoa a couple of years ago came to MetLife Stadium. They sent Sauce Gardner on a blitz. Or actually, it was Teddy Bridgewater who played that game. Yes. He blitzed. Teddy got hurt on that play, but it's all about the scheme, and that was still Mike McDaniels' scheme. And I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens here in a couple minutes. But the holidays, they've arrived here at One Jets Drive, and they've arrived basically everywhere across the country, and the Jets are giving you the chance to go on the ultimate shopping spree. Text SHOP to 26154 to enter for your chance to win a $500 Jet Shop gift card. Terms and conditions do apply. Okay, it's time for tomorrow's headline here on Pregame Central, presented by USVI. And as always, Quincy, you are batting leadoff.
Yeah, so what did you say? This might be an alliteration, right? I got
alliteration? Yeah.
I might be a wordsmith, honestly. I think I've learned something about
a humble
myself.
wordsmith.
No, not humble. I don't like that. So mine is DB's still sticky with sauce on the side, right? So their job today is to stay with some of the best receivers in the league. They have not shown that, but with Tua out there, they are definitely hard to stick and cover. So my thing is that today they will be able to do their job if sauce is out, which it looks like it might be.
All right, I'm just going meat and potatoes. Lazard finds the end zone in his return here. Allen Lazard, so far in 7 games this season, 30 receptions, 412 yards, 5 touchdowns in 7 games. 5 touchdowns in 7 games. I went to my solo a little bit early because I was so excited about Lazard returning to the lineup. But the other thing that is crazy about Allen Lazard overall this year, he's second in receiving yards with 412, despite just playing 7 games.
Yeah. The resurgence of that guy on your screen, Allen Lazard, from last year to this year really was shown early in the year before he sustained a chest injury. It's good to see him back in the lineup. And for me, I'm going with the young guys. Young backs flash against the Finns because Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis each have an opportunity here to really put what they want on tape. We've seen it from Braylon Allen in spurts. We saw it against the Tennessee Titans in week 2 and periodically throughout the season. This is really a time for Isaiah Davis, that guy on your screen, to really make his name known for this Jets team, the Jets fans, and the NFL. So I'm excited to see what he has going on here. And as we have 2 minutes left here before the inactives come out, an hour and a half before kickoff as we wrap up, Q, I'm just curious, what are your final thoughts here for the Jets? If we've talked about this game, we've diced it and analyzed it in so many different ways. Yeah. What is the thing that you want to see, in one sentence?
I think the Jets have to play physical. That's the biggest thing. They have to play physical, and they've got to be able to overcome adversity. That's kind of been the story of this season. Overcome adversity. Something bad is going to happen. How are you going to show up?
What about you, EA?
I want the Jets to have an opportunity to win this ball game late, because when you look at the 3-9 record, you're looking at the Jets, a team that has not been able to close defensively or get that drive offensively. They have 6 losses by less than 7 points. But the last couple games on the road, it has not been pretty on 2 of the past 3, where there's an avalanche in Pittsburgh. You lost there against the Arizona Cardinals, that game got away from you early. I want the Jets to come out and give themselves a chance on the road in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, I agree. I think if you're a Jets fan, you want to see fight. And, the Dolphins have won 3 straight against the Jets. They've won 7 of the last 8. They haven't lost an at-home game, to your point, against the Green and White since week 4. They haven't lost at home against the Jets, it says, since week 4 of 2015. We might have to double-check that. Or because
No, that's right. That was the game in London.
Game.
The Jets were visiting.
So not in Florida.
Not in Florida.
But, okay.
2014.
Technically a home game.
Yes.
But realistically a neutral site game.
Yes.
That's Aaron Rodgers. Let's take a look at the inactives here on Pregame Central presented by USVI as it is officially 11:30. Breece Hall is obvious. We knew that. Xavier Newman, Quantez Stigard, Braden McGregor, Sauce Gardner, in fact, out, and Malachi Corley is the odd man out at receiver as Alan Lazard is back into the lineup here. And so that's all we have here on Pregame Central presented by USVI. Jets Dolphins in 90 minutes, but make sure to stay tuned right here for Jets Overtime following the game.